All right, so welcome everybody to another Magic Show podcast. I'm here today with Mr. Patrick Chapin, the one and only. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, what up, Evan?
All right, man. So Rise of the Eldrazi is coming. The rares and the mythics are coming faster and furiouser than ever. And I'm curious, what gets you excited about Rise of the Eldrazi? What are your favorites so far?
Yeah, this set's it's kind of funny. This set goes a little bit in the opposite direction as World Wake with regards to where they have the awesomeness. Because like World Wake, a lot of the best cards were kind of subtle. Like a lot of people didn't really pick up at first just how awesome so many of the cards were because they were such spiky cards, you know, like the Manlands and Tectonic Edge and the Chalice and all that.
Yeah.
But Rise of the Eldrazi, it's a good thing we've had so many years of hyperbole to prepare us for how just over the top some of these cards are. Not necessarily just with straight up power level, because it's not like it's a bunch of wild Nakados and, you know, and like super. I mean, there's some fantastic cards, but the cards is just so epic, you know, so awe inspiring.
They are huge. They are absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, it's really fun too, because I mean, first of all, I'm picturing playing some limited games, and from looking at it, the more and more I look at it, the more it feels like this really is going to be a world where we're actually just casting 8/8s and 7/7s and 10/10s and whatnot every game in limited.
Wow.
And I was initially thinking, I was like, well, what's it going to be like if each person only has like one or two Eldrazi? And like if each person only has like just this one monster Eldrazi guy, is the limited format even going to really showcase that element of the set? But now, having seen some of the common, the fact that there's an 8/8 with ability, and there's an 8/8 Annihilator guy for 8 mana at common, and obviously 8 mana seems like a ton, but you got to remember in this world, it's a bunch of defenders. There's all these walls that are buying time, and then there's these mana accelerators and the Eldrazi spawn. The limited games are going to be cool where people are actually just bashing each other with 8/8s with abilities and stuff. I mean,
I'm excited. I'm excited to see huge towering monsters come smashing in that make you sacrifice permanents.
Now, as far as the constructed cards go, which I assume is the more specific nature of your question, well, first of all, let's start with Wall of Omens.
Okay.
Because, I mean, there's no question Wall of Omens, which is the white wall of blossoms, is, that card is a card that is going to deliver. That is a card that is, like, it's going to be hyped through the roof from the first moment that it was confirmed. That card was speculated to be one of the 5 best cards in the set, and it's going to live up to the hype. Now, Wizards, bless their heart, made the card only uncommon, so that following in the path of Path to Exile and Bloodbraid Elf and Fire Spout and Kitchen Finks, we have another one of those just truly epic uncommon cards that's going to be a tournament staple. Everyone needs to have 4 of it. Anybody who's ever going to play white at all, and even if you don't play white, there's no question your friends are going to borrow the card from you over and over and over again.
Oh my God,
it's kind of crazy. Good. That's actually one of my picks right now, where I'm just sort of like I don't know, like I see it. It's like a lot of people seem to be missing the fact that this card is like Kitchen Finks or Path to Exile or Bloodbraid Elf in terms of it's just going to get so much play in many formats, and it's just going to be a staple for time to come. So
yeah, it was funny. I was looking the other day. I was looking. Just so happened to look at my Conflux review, my Conflux sort of spoiler shows and stuff. And at one point, I listed my top 10. Path to Exile is at the top, and I'm like, just go ahead and spend $4 on it. You're going to be playing it as long as you play Magic. Just go ahead. And Ben mentioned yesterday that we are actually buying Path to Exile for $4 right now. I know, and that's with Conflux near at the end of his cycle. Yeah.
Because that card's going to be... And it's funny, too, because a lot of people... Sometimes it seems like people give you a hard time about when you hype up the cards, but they never even stop to go, wait a minute. Evan was one of those people who said Path to Exile was going to actually be worth it. It's not Swords to Plowshares, so don't think it's going to replace Swords to Plowshares. Right. It's just that the card is awesome, and it's like one of the best removal spells in the format if you're looking for just efficiency. Because I know there was that backlash initially where a lot of people were like, oh no, Path to Exile sucks, card disadvantage. No?
I never understood it. I really didn't. There was just never a point in which I was like, this card is bad. How? I didn't get it.
Well, see, it's a lot like Path to Exile was like Maelstrom Pulse, where there were some people who were just like, this card is the greatest thing ever. This card's better than Vindicate. But then there was the backlash of people who were like, no, this card isn't as good as Vindicate. This card's a sorcery. But then a sorcery speed Putrefy. But then, but in the end, it turns out, look, now everybody just knows Maelstrom Pulse is, of course, a 4-of staple in a variety of formats. But
which is fantastic.
You know,
but I'm also curious. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's better to avoid the extremes, you know? Like, a lot of people have a tendency to just jump off with their snap judgment one way or the other.
I'm really curious what you think about Momentous Fall, giving instant speed card draw to green.
See, Momentous Fall is a card that's going to require a little bit of context.
Okay.
Because the thing is, it has the potential to be very powerful. I mean, it's a card draw spell, and green has traditionally valued card draw spells greater than card draw spells of a similar power level in blue. Mm-hmm. Like, just look at how much better Harmonize was in Concentrate.
Oh my God, infinitely better.
And it's funny because most of the time we always joke about how cards are just better if they're blue than if they're a different color. You know, like, we'd rather have Wall of Blossoms in blue would be much better than a Wall of Blossoms in green. Mm-hmm. But that's because of the fact that blue has so much power level that whenever blue has an opportunity to do any of the things that are a little bit outlier for it, it's particularly valuable. Well, card draw is a bit of an outlier type thing for green, where it gets it, but it doesn't get it that much, and it doesn't get it very much at all. And so whenever it does get it, if it's actually good, it has the potential to be particularly great. It gets a lot better than it normally would be, because it's something that, I mean, green has mana accelerators, first of all, so it particularly values card draw. But then second of all, there isn't that much competition. You know, there isn't like right now. In blue, if you look, some of the counter spells that before people would say are terrible are getting a lot of play now simply because there isn't the competition. And
that's out there, essentially.
Right, and with Momentous Fall, it's giving green a potentially potent card draw spell without much other competition, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, you draw cards equal to the creature's power, so, like, just looking off baseline, looking off the top, like in a vacuum, it would seem that in Standard, you really do want to draw at least 3 cards to make this worth it. Because, to me, what I'm sort of picturing is that if you compare it to Harmonize, Harmonize now is a card that I think would, for certain, see play.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you look at Momentous Fall compared to Harmonize, if you're actually drawing 3 cards, mm-hmm. And let's say maybe gaining 3 life, mm-hmm. you're doing it at instant speed and gaining a little bit of life, but you have to make up for it by the fact that you lose this creature. You have to actually work for it. So I think that if you're just looking at doing it for at least 3, I don't think you're necessarily going to get enough value. You're not necessarily going to get the value that you're looking for. You might, but it would take a kind of contrived scenario, because if you'll recall, the place where Harmonize saw the most play was actually in decks that didn't have any creatures in play when they cast Harmonize. Or if they did, it was like a Wall of Roots. You know? Because I'm picturing, like, the old way that people played Harmonize was in big tap-out mana ramp decks.
Yeah.
And this card is not necessarily going to work for that. So the question is, where would you put a card like this?
Well, for me, it actually sort of leads into the other big spoiler for Mr. Flores, which is Vengevine, which I think I love that guy. I don't want him to be another Talera's Battalion. I really don't. I think he's a lot better than that. What do you think? I mean, sack him, draw 4, gain 3, play a couple dudes, get him back. Like, seems okay in, you know, with each other.
Well, I definitely have some thoughts on the Vengevine. I'm kind of hesitant because I don't know if I want to. I guess just cut to that chase. Kind of wanted to share a few thoughts on Wall of Omens and Momentous Fall before segueing in, I guess, to the card that I think is potentially the best card in the set.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. So let's back up a little bit. Go ahead and discuss Wall of Omens if you have anything else regarding Mr. Wall of Omens here.
All right. So, long story short, with Wall of Omens, right off top, unless you have a compelling reason, if you're playing any sort of a mid-rangey deck or control deck, like if you have access to Wall of Omens, it's such a potent anti-Jund card. It's hard to describe just how good it is against Jund, because it's the perfect size where it stops Thrynax and Bloodbraid Elf, like blocking them, without getting bolted easily. It's cheap and occupies a spot where you don't have that many good plays anyway in a control or mid-rangey deck. It's card advantage where it's stopping a relevant permanent of theirs and giving you another card draw and for less mana. Now, people are going to point out that it loses to Putrid Leech, but it doesn't actually lose to Putrid Leech because, first of all, most Jund players aren't winning the game by hitting you with Putrid Leech 5 times.
Sure.
I mean, there's going to be occasional situations like that, but if you can't stop a Putrid Leech by turn 7, you're doing it wrong. So, make sure your deck can actually beat a Putrid Leech, and then the Wall of Blossoms, or the Wall of Omens, he helps make it so that on turn 2 when you play Wall of Omens, on turn 3 you play Oblivion Ring and hit the Putrid Leech, and now you don't have to worry about the fact that your opponent's turn 3 is Surrounding Thrynax. Because now if you look at the scenario, you each spent your 2-drop, you each spent your 3-drop, and even though you lost the mana dealing with the Putrid Leech, you gained a mana by playing the Wall of Omens to stop the Thrynax and draw up a card. Now you're ahead of the Jund player, so that he has to Bloodbraid Elf just to catch up to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think Wall of Omens might be one of the absolute best cards in the format against Jund. And the thing that's so beautiful about it is that it gives you a blocker to help protect your Jace the Mind Sculptor, your Elspeth, or your Gideon, or whoever it is. He gives you an early line of defense that's not a dead card against other controlling or mid-rangey decks. He happens to cross over and do fantastic things, like against a red deck, blocking Goblin Guide or Hellspark Elemental. I mean, this guy's like, this is the exact perfect card for blue-white deck. I could not ask for a better card for blue-white.
I bet you couldn't. I mean, at this point, it's funny, like Ken Nagel twittered, and he said, from the upcoming PTQ season, which do you think is going to be played more, Wall of Omens or Bloodbraid Elf? What do you think about that question?
Well, I think Bloodbraid Elf, simply because I think that Wall of Omens will go in a lot of Bloodbraid Elf decks. But
it's everywhere.
I think there's going to be a new deck that emerges that has both Wall of Omens and Bloodbraid Elf in it, because the current versions of Naya cannot actually, it's not real. They lose to Jund now, and they don't have a good spot in the metagame because they both lose to blue-white and they lose to Jund, and they're going to be vulnerable to the new Wall of Omens. However, I think there's the potential for a more rampy, slightly big, maybe not even ramp, more of a Vengevine. And I'll talk more about that when we're getting there. But I think the Vengevine is going to change things a lot, and people don't realize it yet, just the implications of that card, just how powerful that card is. But I think that there may be a new Naya deck that has Vengevine in it, and Wall of Omens may have a spot in that deck.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. You had mentioned Gideon Jura a minute ago, and we had spoken about this privately. But I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I still, to this day, think that Sarkhan the Mad is better and will be worth more and will be played more than Gideon. What do you think about that?
I think that it is unlikely that Sarkhan the Mad will be worth more, simply because, mostly because of momentum. I mean, as it is now, Gideon is selling for like almost 3 times Sarkhan the Mad, so it would take an awful lot to change that disparity. Second of all, I think that Gideon is a more versatile card. Now, Sarkhan the Mad, I think, will initially see a lot of play, specifically in things like Jund, but you got to understand how much competition there is at that exact spot. There's not a shortage of expensive cards that are good in Jund. That's not what Jund is really short of,
Sure.
And Sarkhan the Mad just isn't as sexy. And if there's one thing that we've learned about the top-end mythics, the sexy ones are the ones that end up being worth, the Bane Slayers and the Jace the Mind Sculptors. It's not the Jund staple card.
Right.
Jund staple card, that's not what draws the top dollar values,
I'm not thinking
Like
so
even
much as Jund as much as like a new black-red like suicide aggro thing, you know, with your Blightnings and your Slavering Nulls and your Hellspark Elementals and all that good stuff.
And you think Sarkhan the Mad is going to be just for sure better than Siege Gang Commander, Malachor Blood Witch, Abyssal Persecutor, or any of the other potential expensive cards that a black-red deck could play?
I think they work together. I think Siege Gang is the only one that I would, you know, be using in that regard. But I think between the two, to be able to continue, you know, pulling your bolts and your unearth guys, I think it would be worth it. I don't know. I feel like that guy is really good. To turn Hellspark Elementals into dragons, like, seems incredibly sexy to me. Like, crazy good. Hit you for 3, make it 5/5.
Different. He's such a weird card. He's so different and so unusual that I think I'm going to have to. I'm literally just going to have to take the cop out and say I'm going to have to play with the card more in order to determine just how good I think he is, because I think he's clearly powerful enough to get to see tournament play.
Sure.
But my snap judgment on his dollar value is that Gideon will remain a higher dollar card, because I think that Gideon is going to have a lot of different homes, and he's going to be one of those cards that's played maybe a little bit more than it deserves. Mm-hmm. Because I think the card is good, but I think that the card is getting a little, like, people are putting a little too much of an expectation on it, and he'll still turn out to be good. But I think that an awful lot of people are just going to really like Gideon a lot. And
I can see that. I mean, I can definitely see that trend in the way that it's a lot sexier, it looks a lot more interesting, does a lot more cooler things as a Planeswalker.
And Gideon feels good. Like, everything going on with Gideon, it's very easy to understand. Like, once you look at Gideon as a 6/6 Bloodbraid Elf, right, where all he ever flips up is Unmake, or I guess Terminator Deathstroke or whatever. He's like a, you know, for 5 mana, you get this creature that when it enters the battlefield, the first thing you do is you kill their guy. That's so good. It's like a Bloodbraid Elf always flipping up Terminate, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's super sick. And then he's immune to Day of Judgment, your own or your opponent's. And the fact that after you use his kill ability, his creature kill ability, he still has a 4 loyalty, making him out of Bolt range or Blightning range or Bloodbraid Elf range. Mm-hmm. That makes him much more durable. And then he can immediately start bashing for 6, you know? Now, the fact that he has the ability to make all your opponent's creatures have to attack him, that has nice applications also, especially since it can make his loyalty become so high.
Oh, my God.
You know, that's the potential. I mean, you have the potential to just end up with a huge amount of time.
Right.
Now, one of the things Gideon's going to do is it's going to continue the trend of just making Maelstrom Pulse better and better and better. But I would hope at this point that people realize that the card is a 2/2 staple that you're going to need to have access to if you're playing those colors.
Well, and I guess this sort of can lead us into something we spoke about privately, and you were a heavy influence on the show this week. But your thoughts on levelers basically just like completely changed my mind as to what I thought they were, how good I thought they were not, and once you sort of put it in context, I hope I communicated it well enough this week in what opportunity cost is and how levelers work and how levelers change things. But I don't know, and I think that they would also, that the player base would get a lot more credence from that point of view if you could share your thoughts on levelers and how they work.
All right, the levelers, the level creatures, like most, I guess, like the highlight of which is like Student of Warfare, or the dragon, the red dragon 2-drop. What's that guy's name?
Kargan Dragonlord.
Yeah, Kargan Dragonlord and Student of Warfare, the red figure Destiny and the white figure Destiny. They're all right. Let's break it down for a second. First of all, there seems to be this negative feedback towards them, which is crazy considering how good those cards are, the whole class of them. But I think it stems from primarily two things. One, the fact that the only leveler they really can compare it to in the past is Figure of Destiny. And Figure of Destiny is unbelievable. It was a format-defining card. It's one of the, Figure of Destiny is so unbelievably good. That's the bar, that's the standard. And you know what's crazy? People don't even realize this, but the levelers in Rise of the Eldrazi, actually, a couple of them actually are at Figure of Destiny's power level. Student of Warfare, the Dragon Lord, those two guys are on the Figure of Destiny curve. Do you know how sick it is that there's a set that has 2 Figure of Destinies in it?
Oh my God.
That's crazy to me. And people look. Okay, so on the one hand, people are comparing all the random levelers to Figure of Destiny because every single one is not as good as Figure of Destiny. They're immediately going, well, it would be better if it was more like Figure of Destiny. Which, yeah, guess what? An awful lot of cards would. But the other thing that's getting people is the whole instant speed versus sorcery speed thing. You've got to be kidding me. Okay, first of all, Magic is not a game where every single thing is supposed to be an instant. Because if everything was an instant, then it wouldn't be like there are any instants. Mm-hmm. You know, how is it that we managed to walk around having cards like Day of Judgment as a sorcery, or Blightning as a sorcery, or, you know, or creatures that don't have flash? You know, just because there are creatures with flash doesn't mean that creatures without flash aren't good. They're just costed differently because of the fact that they don't have flash.
Yeah.
The Student of Warfare, like, look at Figure of Destiny versus Student of Warfare. Figure of Destiny, after you sink 5 mana into it, you're up to a 4/4 vanilla. Student of Warfare is already attacking as a 3/3 first strike on the second turn. So much more efficient.
Oh,
I mean, you realize that if they were costing these cards to be pumped at instant speed, first of all, they would all take more to pump. Second of all, they wouldn't be as awesome at the high end. Third of all, it wouldn't actually be more interesting because even after the cards are all costed out so that you can pump them at instant speed, the game situations wouldn't be interesting. It would always be wait for your end step and sink all my mana into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was one of the problems with Figure of Destiny, right? Not problems, but one of the things with Figure of Destiny that everybody always did was the only time you ever pumped him was in response to something like blocking or a burn spell or on your opponent's end step. Now with the sorcery speed, people actually have to plan how they're going to use their turns. Just think about it from the perspective of every time your opponent has a sorcery speed pump guy, a leveler. Because then when you're playing limited and your opponent spends 4 mana to level his guy 4 times, but doesn't spend his last 2 mana, what trick is he holding? Why wouldn't he have spent those last 2 mana? You know?
Yeah, that makes it really interesting.
What about you? What about when you're in a situation where you can pump your leveler, and you only level him 3 times and you leave 1 mana open that you could have leveled him with? Now, you could be telegraphing to your opponent that you have a 1 mana trick. Now, I mean, I don't even know what all tricks are in the format yet, but the point is that now, what if you convince your opponent so much that you have the trick by not spending the mana that he plays around it, and you didn't even really have it? There's an interesting level of game going on there. There's bluffing. There's strategy. You have to plan. How much is it worth to you? What about if you actually have the trick and you tap out all your mana anyway and just level your guy through the roof? Mm-hmm. Now your opponent thinks, oh, well, he doesn't have it, or else he would have saved the mana. So he doesn't play around your counterspell. Or, I mean, there's so many different things to it like that, you know? So right off the top, it actually makes the gameplay much, much more interesting. But then, second of all, and this is the exact sort of thing that had people so confused about M10. Remember the M10 rules thing? Where there was a whole bunch of people that their snap judgment was, oh no, this makes the game not skill testing anymore. No, I mean, it just took a little while to realize that the strategic decisions involved are just slightly moved to a better place. And with this, it's actually even more clear that the when you can pump at instant speed on a single card, it could be interesting. If all the levelers were instant speed, then it wouldn't be interesting at all. Plus, think about how complicated the board would be. It would be annoying. Instead of important strategic decisions like how much do I pump, you'd be stuck in the situation of trying to calculate every possible permutation of pump, let it resolve, the other person pump and response, pump. This, I'll level this guy, I'll level this guy, I'll level this guy, I'll level this guy. This guy's power toughness changes, so he gains this ability. This guy, you know, I mean...
It sounds like those horrible game states that like ruined Odyssey, where everything was triggering and they would get threshold, and all of a sudden like 4 permanents would change, and that led to really like painful, complicated.
Well, it's actually worse than that. I mean, a lot of people really enjoyed Odyssey block, and I can't blame them. But the problem is that with levelers at instant speed, you'd end up with a situation that's half as fun as Odyssey, but twice as complicated, and that's not good for the game. I mean. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be there's a few people out there who just want the game to be as much like Versus as possible, where it's so hard that nobody can even figure out what's going on the board. But that's not. I mean, that's not why Magic's having the best success ever right now.
Right.
Now, the other big thing that I think people are overlooking is that the levelers can be leveled 1 level at a time, whereas Figure of Destiny, it's, you got to sink it all in, right?
Yeah.
So
you had to put in 6 mana and cross your fingers and see what happened.
And think about every single time you've pumped Figure of Destiny to a 4/4 and they bolted it in response, or incinerated it, or whatever, or they volcanic fallout it in response. How many times was that you? How many times did you get hit by Figure of Destiny and they responded by blowing you up?
Way too many.
And it's spent your whole turn. You spent your first 3 turns.
Yeah.
Now, the levelers, like Student of Warfare, you can sink your extra mana in your spare time. You can actually just progress your game as normal. Like Student of Warfare, you lead with a turn 1/1/1. Turn 2, you're already hitting for 3 and it's for strike, right?
Wow.
So right off the top, you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine if he's on the draw and his turn 2 is Ever-Flowing Chalice. You know?
He's already at 14. Like, he's sweating it, on his 3rd turn. So now he has to answer this one dude.
Right, and the thing is, you can actually just keep playing your cards, and if you have 1 mana left over, level him. If you have 2 mana left over, level him. You just sink whatever extra mana you have laying around. I mean, think about how many times you're playing, and over the course of the game, you'll just have 1 or 2 mana laying around. If you just sink a little extra, it's sort of like a layaway. You end up getting a power creature on layaway pretty cheap. It's not about the fact that he costs that much mana total, because you're not casting him that all in one shot. You're spending it in installments. It's like Dreadship Reef. You know how many people didn't realize how good Dreadship Reef was for a long time?
Oh, it did forever.
It's this colorless land, and you have to tap it and pay a colorless to put a counter on it, and then you have to pay a colorless to pull counters off. It's the same sort of thing where Dreadship Reef actually turned out to be awesome, and even today gets played and extended because the opportunity cost is so low. You just do it in your spare time. You don't need to do it. You just, when it's convenient, you do it, and then you get this great advantage out of it. The levelers, there's a lot of good levelers. Now, there are at least 2 that are in the Figure of Destiny range. Maybe there's more. I don't know. I'm going to have to play with some more. Because some of them are kind of...
That Transcendent Master, that guy looks really good to me.
You know, the 3/3 for 3 that starts just in your spare time, just put whatever colorless mana you want into it.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he's a 6/6 lifelinker, and you're like, okay, huge monster, smash. So
I think it's kind of interesting to think about the potential for a white deck to go big now, because one of the big problems with a white Winnie deck was a shortage of late game. Your stage 3 was so bad because all you really had access to was like, okay, well, I'll have a few man lands, or Elspeth, or Ranger for some really weak creatures, or maybe Stoneforger for some equipment, which isn't bad, but it's not great. The thing is, now you have as many Figure of Destinies as you want. You can play Transcendent Master, which the white decks were kind of short in the 3-drop spot anyway. Mm-hmm. And you can play Student of Warfare, and they were short in the 1 spot. Student of Warfare is the perfect card to range your vetoes up, and the Transcendent Master starts off as a reasonable bodied threat anyway, and then starts becoming a powerhouse that can just totally take over a game, which ensures that a white deck actually has enough tools to go big instead of just getting stuck, with you drawing Grizzly Bears on turn 5 and your opponent's dropping Angels and Sphinxes or Dragons or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So,
another card I was looking at that just got spoiled today by Mr. David Marshall was Consuming Vapors. And I think that card is awesome, and being sold right now for about $3, and I'm like, this card has to be worth way more than that. That card.
No, that's not common, right?
No, it's rare. Target player sacrifices a creature.
Consuming Vapors is a rare?
Yes.
All right, is there time for me to buy a couple plays? Wait, hold on.
There are 42 right now in stock.
Yeah, there's got to be. Please don't mind me being a little distracted right now. I'm hoping that in the 30 seconds it takes me to get there. You're serious?
I'm absolutely 100% serious. Right now, $2.99 on Star City Games. Consuming Vapors, just for those listening, a black and 3 colorless sorcery. Target player sacrifices a creature. You gain life equal to that creature's toughness, and it has rebound. It's like, you didn't really need to even add the you gain life equal to that creature's toughness, I think, to make that card fantastic. But it's just like this insane bonus that comes with it.
Right, so. Okay, first of all, this card, so right off the top, it's a good removal spell that, aside from doing things like answering Great Sable Stag, or Sphinx
Wow.
of Jar Isle. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times have you played Jund and your opponent plays a Sphinx of Jar Isle?
Oh my God.
And you always think about the Gatekeeper, but it's so hard on your mana, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because you can never hit triple black when you want to, or you'll be sitting there and you'll die to it while you have triple black, or when you don't have triple black, and it beats you to death.
Isn't this card a sweet answer to Sphinx of Jar Isle?
Oh yeah, and particularly Great Sable Stag. Like, man, that was
The
normally
Stag,
like
sure.
you don't have the
Firewalker.
bolt.
And then the best part is, even if your opponent only has one creature in play, if you cast the spell, what are they going to do? Just not play a creature on the next turn? Well, now they're going to have to, but now you sort of time-walked them.
Yeah. If that was their only creature, like Consuming Vapor is just sitting out there waiting. Oh my God.
I think BDM is exactly right. This card is sweet. I mean,
Yeah.
The biggest thing holding it back is the fact that it's a 4 casting cost spell, and these days, there's no shortage of good 4 and 5 casting cost spells. But the card does some things that you want to have done, and I think it's going to cross over into a variety of different decks. Like, for instance, what about Grixis? In most Grixis decks, you don't even play. You have a real shortage of life gain anyway, because you want to fuel things like Sign and Blood. And so life gain is at a premium, and this card's an efficient source of card advantage, and the biggest thing that's potentially a flaw to it, I guess, is that it's a little awkward if you get stuck having to hit tokens, with tiny little guys, and you just start falling behind on speed.
I agree.
But it's kind of cute the way that it interacts with sweepers, because if you both have sweepers and this card, you can, if your opponent slow plays it, you can just play this card. Especially if they're only playing out 2 guys. If they only put out 1 guy, then obviously you do this and then they can't play another guy next turn or else it'll just die. But if they put out 2 guys, then they're in an even worse spot. Then you're just getting so much value where you kill their guy and gain enough life to survive or to undo the damage they do to you on the next attack phase, and then you kill the next guy and gain enough life. I mean, the card is potentially very potent.
Yeah,
but
it seems fantastic. I mean, basically, it does what you want to do, and then it does it again. That's what I like so much about it.
And here's another thing you should keep in mind, Evan. Think about it with Abyssal Persecutor.
Oh,
the first
so
time
sick.
you persecute, so you put up the Persecutor on turn 4, and then on turn 5, you bash your opponent with the Persecutor, and then do this spell to make them lose their creature.
Oh my
and
God.
And now, if they don't play out another creature, you can actually sack your Abyssal Persecutor, gain 6 more life, and kill your opponent, or you could just hit them again. It's up to you. You leave the option so that it's just sitting there as a free way to get rid of your Persecutor and gain a huge amount of value. Gaining 6 life is a nice way to go out, because sometimes when the Abyssal Persecutor's not there as a blocker anymore, you want that extra cushion to make sure that your opponent doesn't kill you. No, there's obviously going to be other times where your opponent is 0, so as soon as you sacrifice your Persecutor, you'll win on the spot. But
yeah, which obviously I think is the dream. But I mean, Consuming Vapors could actually make Persecutor playable. I mean, beyond the ninja shenanigans that Conley Woods was showing us at the Grand Prix, which I thought was brilliant, by the way.
I think Abyssal Persecutor. I'm not ready to build everything around it yet, but I think that obviously the card is a powerful card. It just needs to have the right context. And I and a number of others maintained that the problem with Abyssal Persecutor before wasn't that it wasn't good, because it's a 6/6 flyer with almost no 6/6 flying trample with almost no drawback. Right. The problem with Abyssal Persecutor is that that's not what the format called for. Because if you look at the decks that were good, they're decks full of past exiles, Day of Judgments, cancels, terminates, Maelstrom Pulses, card advantage, like whether it's Blightning and Bloodbraid or Mind Spring and Jace. That's not that's not the world for Abyssal Persecutor. But the world's changing. Maybe the world will be right for Abyssal Persecutor.
I'm looking at these cards like next to each other. I mean, between Consuming Vapors and Momentous Fall, like Persecutor seems pretty good right now.
Momentous Fall is kind of an exciting one to do to your Persecutor, right?
Guess I'll gain 6, draw 6, instant speed in response to your terminate. Why, sure.
Well, I don't think that they're going to be terminating your Persecutor most of the time. And maybe they are, in which case I think you're doing it all right anyway. But the point is that, yeah, Momentous Fall and Consuming Vapor give you some ways to try to deal with your Persecutor and gain value instead of just wasting a removal spell on it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, another card I was like insanely excited about this morning was Inquisition of Kozilek. That card.
That's the duress, right? The smother duress?
Yes, the new duress thing, yeah.
Well, it's like Thoughtseize, but the restriction is instead of losing 2 life, you just can't take expensive spells.
Right, so here's the exact wording. It's a black sorcery, uncommon. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it with converted mana cost 3 or less, and they discard it.
All right. So which context are you thinking? Because it's obviously it's like a staple type.
I'm actually thinking it's a lot better in Extended and Legacy than it is in Standard. But I think it will see play in all 3 formats, but that it's like an all-star in Extended, and it's incredible in Legacy, where like Legacy is almost a format completely driven by things that cost 3 or less if they're not named Force of Will, or something like Progenitus or something. Now,
I don't want to be a hater, but I think that something that needs to be remembered is that, like in Legacy, the cards that I would thought seize most of the time are either Ad Nauseam or Force of Will.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be times, obviously, where you're going to want to fight over somebody's other spell, like maybe Entomb or a number of things. But the problem is that there's too many times where what I would thought seize is their Belcher, or their Empty the Warrens, or their Ad Nauseam, or their Force of Will, and I think that Thoughtseize is already not a universal for us, and I think that Thoughtseize is probably a better card for Legacy, because even like a Goblin deck, which is like a good example of a deck where you might want to save the 2 life, it seems like you might really just want to hit that Ringleader.
Fair enough.
But I mean, I'm not positive. I think it's got potential because I think it might be better than Duress in some situations. But I'm hesitant because I think it's going to have applications because there's going to be times where that's just what you want. But my snap judgment is that it's probably not as good as Thoughtseize or possibly even Duress. But maybe it might be better than Duress in the format. But the other thing is that I think Cabal Therapy is probably stronger than it. So I think that Legacy is not going to be where it really shines. So if I can skip down to Type 2. I think you're right that the context for Type 2 is such that it won't be at its absolute best because so many good cards like Jace, Day of Judgment, Bloodbraid Elf, Broodmate Dragon, like there's so many good expensive cards these days, right?
Right. Well, speaking of an expensive card, we something that I think is it's a little more popular than I expected is Consume the Meek. That's the 2 black, 3 colorless instant. The Smother the Culling Sun, essentially destroy each creature with a converted mana cost 3 or less. They can't be regenerated. And I think it's a very exciting card, I think, to look at, but I didn't really see a lot of applications for it. But it seems like, for example, like, it's selling really well at Star City. A lot of people are really excited about it, but I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's because it's an instant, and Culling Sun was so bad, comparatively.
Well, you gotta keep in mind, Culling Sun was far weaker, and was still a somewhat popular card. Like, as far as, like, people liked Culling Sun, they wanted it to be good. This card is so much easier to cast. It's only the 1 color. And the fact that it's an instant is huge. It's huge. That's what makes the card playable. Because I don't think that 5 mana, that it's just not in the same league as, like, okay, look at Chain Reaction. If Chain Reaction was an instant, that card would be all over the place.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
But it's not, right? It's just and the sorcery, it's just, people want it to be good, but it's not quite great. It's okay. It's not bad. It's a solid card. It is, but it's not awesome.
Yeah, it's not getting there.
This card being an instant gives it a little bit more purpose. It can hit haste creatures like like Ball Lightning type stuff, but it can also surprise blow out the White Weenie player who's sitting there with his core Firewalker, his Student of Warfare, and his Devout Lightcaster or White Knight or whatever. He can have a lot of problematic creatures, and this card is the perfect bullet to answer it. It's the perfect hoser card, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be a sideboard card for Jund that's just awesome at what it does. Like, it's a good sideboard card for a Jund deck, because I think that the white decks are going to become a lot harder for Jund once they start incorporating cards like Student of Warfare.
Wall of Omens.
And so, this card totally tips the scales back. And it's a little obnoxious that Jund gets to have so many nice toys in the set. But I definitely understand people. Like, I would hope that anybody who is currently playing with Sprouting Flynex in Type 2 consider, is getting their hands on some of these cards. Because if you're one of those people, then this card is going to surely be a weapon that you're going to want to have in your arsenal if you're in your sideboard, you know. Now, as far as main deck goes, I think it's unlikely that the card's going to see too much main deck play, simply because there's too many good, versatile 5 casting cost spells, like Seaskin Commander or Malak or Blood Witch or anything like that.
Right.
But it's possible, especially if some sort of a Grixis deck wants a different sweeper than just all Earthquakes, you know?
Yeah. All right, so last card, we've got to start wrapping this up, unfortunately, but last card I want to talk about, I want you to tell me what you think of Vengevine.
Absolutely. All right. Vengevine is, all right, right off top, the card's a 4/3 haste for 4. Now, if you look back, I mean, obviously there's been some power creep over the last 15 years, but Tauru Minotaur was a 3/3 haste that put up some very solid finishes. You know, the card, nowadays, the curve is such that a 3/3 haste wouldn't be particularly exciting, but a 4/3 haste, I mean, look at Lava Hounds. Lava Hounds had the extra point of toughness, but did 4 damage to you when it came into play. And that card was great. And again, that was a long time ago, but even today, a 4/3 haste for 4 would not be out of the question for a card to consider, especially if it just gives you a small amount of upside. Yes, but with this card, if you ever live the dream, it's huge. It's a 0-mana 4/3 haste cantrip creature. It's like, I mean, okay, look at Demigod of Revenge. When you play Demigod of Revenge, it's a 5/4 flying haste creature that is very, very hard to cast, but it's fine in its own right. You know, a 5/4 flying haste for 5 is fine, but if you ever live the dream, it's unbelievable. This card's the same sort of way, where a 4/3 haste for 4 is fine. It's not super exciting, but it's fine. But then when you live the dream, it's unbelievable. And I think that there's going to be Vengevine in Jund. There's going to be Vengevine in Naya. There's going to be new kinds of Vengevine decks. The card is just so potentially exciting, and it'll be really interesting to see how the format evolves, because the card is very well positioned. It breaks through Wall of Omens. It's another haste creature for attacking planeswalkers. It's big enough to kill a Gideon, you know? Because, I mean, like, I think that there's a lot of exciting ways that creature is just the right size at the right time, you know? And
it's no Talarius Battalion, is what you're trying to tell me.
Oh, no, not at all. And I think that it's actually going to reward skillful play, because it's going to create these situations where a good player is going to be able to set up, a savvy green mage is going to be able to set up a scenario. They're going to have to decide whether or not they play the creature off the top that they drew, or do they hold it, trying to get to get their guy back for free, you know?
Absolutely.
But it naturally combos great with Bloodbraid Elf and Ranger Vios.
Oh my god, Ranger Vios with Vengevine. Oh my god. That is so sick. That is so sick.
It's a natural curve.
With Boros Bushwhacker? Oh my god, it's so sick.
I'm telling you, man, just turn 4 Vengevine Bash, and then immediately, like, if it dies, you can just go Ranger, get a guy, Bash. Just keep it coming.
Wow. That
is a relentless attack.
Oh my god. Alright, so one thing, Mr. Blyweiss, who is our general manager of acquisitions, is curious as to how you feel on his card evaluations, and do they sort of mirror yours? You know, because he comes with this big article every set release. Everybody's really excited to read his financial evaluations. Do you normally agree or disagree with most of those? I'm curious.
Well, historically, Ben is somebody that I've agreed with more than a lot of people, because, I mean, it seems like there's this pattern of cards that are the kind of cards that I like, that an awful lot of other people don't focus on as much at first. And Ben and I have very similar ideas about the types of cards that are being underrated and the types of cards that are being overrated. So, I mean, he's definitely one person that I always watch very closely, because I think that he's got a pretty good track record in terms of the accuracy of picking certain things, you know, picking winners, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Now, I think that, like, I mean, look at, like, World League. Like, I agreed with him completely on Jace as a Persecutor, Maylands. Like, once he was shifting the Persecutor to being slightly overhyped, you know. And I think that with this set, the biggest thing I want to see is what his opinion is on the Mythic situation, because I think that there are a number of Mythics in the set that might be a little overhyped. And I think that it's going to be really tough, because so many of the cards in this set are not just strictly powerful. They're not just Baneslayers and Jaces where the card is just awesome. They're cards that require a little bit more context. So it's going to be a really exciting time for the first month and a half that the set is out, where people are trying to figure out what's the context, what is the new situation. Is it really just all Jund all the time, or is there something that's going to throw things into upheaval?
Yeah, and I think for what it's worth, just to throw it out here at the end, I think All Is Dust is not that good. I think All Is Dust is just going to be a $5 mythic, and it's kind of cute, but it's not going to see a lot of play. I think right now it's way too hyped for what it's actually going to do.
I don't know. Again, that's another card that I think is going to require some context. Mm-hmm. But I personally think All Is Dust is going to be it's going to end up a solid card that sees tournament play. It might not end up being a $15 mythic simply because there's so many other good mythics. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't be surprised if it stays up there because I think it is actually a good card. It's not a tier 1 card, but I think it is a very, very good. I think it is a good card, and I think the key is that it's a Chroma's Vengeance for green, for black, for blue, for colors that don't normally get sweepers like that, and that's very exciting to me. And
I think that's what makes everybody really excited about the card and why its price is what it is. I think, but that in the sort of the real world, quote unquote, that I think it's not going to live up. But again, I haven't played with it. This is just me thinking because I'm looking at cards and that's what we do. But
well, then tell you what, Snap. What are your quick 5 picks from the set as of right now so far? What 5 cards do you pick from Rise of the Eldrazi as the most exciting tournament cards?
Student of Warfare, Vengevine, Gideon, Sarkhan, and Emrakul.
I think I'm going with Student of Warfare, Vengevine, Wall of Omens, and then I guess maybe the dragon, the red leveler,
Kargan Dragon,
and yeah, and then I guess potentially like Emrakul's very good, but I don't know if like the more I see how fast and hostile this format is, the more I wonder if he's going to be fast enough, at 15 minutes. But maybe All Is Dust. I don't know yet. I guess I'm mostly looking at the Figure of Destiny levelers and then the walls, like the new Vine Trellis, the new Wall Blossoms, and the Planeswalkers are solid to me, but they don't have me over the top with them yet. And then obviously Vengevine. I think Vengevine might be I think my best cards are Student Warfare, Vengevine, and Wall Blossoms, Wall of Omens.
Yeah, I should have thrown Wall of Omens. I was just looking at rares and mythics, but either way, I do appreciate your time, sir. Your new book, The Next Level Magic, 420 pages of absolutely fantastic text and pictures, all full color, all new material from Mr. Chapin, is out now. If people are interested in buying a copy. And I've seen it in my hands myself, and it is fantastic. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you much, man.
Yep.
I'm just overjoyed with the reception.
Yeah, it's been great, and we'll talk more about that probably in an upcoming show. But either way, Patrick, I do appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.